quite frankly, sex in college for me was fairly traumatic. I think in this society, no one does sex very good until they're 30. I mean, I really believe now that you don't. It's the opposite of Jack Weinberg's never trust anyone over 30. I think it's only when you get to be about 30 that you actually have sexual fun. And that there's this incredible programming in our society that everybody knows how to do it right away, real good, that everybody's terrific at it. In fact, some people are great at it, some people are terrible at it, and most people struggle through a whole bunch of years thinking, oh my God, everybody else is really good at it except for me, and oh my God, right. So most of my college life, sex was terrible. I found myself always in that awful situation that women found themselves before the women's movement of basically having to sort of say no and being sort of called on it, and everything was sort of tense and difficult, and so you tried to have intellectual relations with people that weren't sexual, and then there were other people who had a lot more sex and probably a lot more fun. But for me, sex was a terrible trauma during that time. And while I believed firmly in sexual liberation, and I still do. I mean, I still think it's important, but I think we haven't gotten there. I don't think anybody is really taught the truth about sex, which is basically that it comes slowly to some people, and that's normal, or that women generally don't achieve orgasm through penetration, and that's true for more than 50% of women, and that's okay. And, you know, a lot of other basic things. So we weren't really given sexual liberation. We were given a pseudo-sexual liberation that basically just said, you know, women will, what was the line? Women will go to bed with men who say no, or whatever. That kind of thing. We're there, we're free, we're easy available, etc. And the pill, of course, was there to make that possible. And I think the pill was great. I mean, the pill is not very safe, but I think it was great that we had contraception. I think it was great that sex was allowed, etc. But I think we didn't have the tools to really use it well. And I think the real problem with the 60s counterculture was that most of us who experienced it were still adolescents. And so therefore, we didn't have the stuff to really get off with it. You know, I mean, in my 40s, I can really get into a lot of the stuff that was happening in the 60s, and I'm much healthier and able to do it now than I was when I was much too fucked up when I was, you know, 18 or 19. I mean, come on. You know, I mean, when I was 18, I didn't think I had the whole, you know. I mean, really, I really didn't believe. I thought I wasn't normal, and it wasn't until the women's movement and consciousness-raising groups where I realized that I was just like all the other people, that I was normal, that I was perfectly reasonable, that my fears were shared by thousands of people. But when I was 19, I felt, you know, alone. My problems, you know, are not shared by anyone. I'm strange. I can't have good sex. What's wrong with me, etc. I'm weird. You know, all that stuff. And I think that many more people, men and women, experience that in the darkness of their nights when they closed the door to their dorm or their apartment or whatever, that sort of darkness, that those problems were really there, and no one could discuss that freely, because that was what happened in the 70s. That kind of psychological growth happened after the 60s. But if we had had that in the 60s, we would have made the revolution.